Hello, my darlings. Today we're going to be talking about the 4 I's of toxic liberalism. And one does not need to consider themselves liberal to adhere to the 4 I's of toxic liberalism, because it doesn't matter what political affiliation you believe that you are, because everyone is subject to this behavior and everyone is easily likely to exhibit this behavior regardless of whatever their political affiliations are. Okay? So, I'm just going to tell you what they are, and then I'm going to explicate on them a little bit more. The 4 I's of toxic liberalism are imagination, indoctrination, intimidation, and integration. Okay? So if you have an idea, okay, and this idea has to come from your imagination, okay, like for example, you're a white person imagining that you are some race that you aren't. You're a white person imagining that you can claim to be some race that you are not. Okay, that's imagined. Do you understand me? That's an imaginative invention. That's an imaginary fucking fantasy you've created for yourself. Okay, and it's not true, right? And that's just an example. You can think of a lot of different things that fit this criteria. But so you imagined that. Maybe you could pass for not being wholly white, even though you are wholly white, okay? But you're like, oh, I want to claim that I'm Honduran. I want to claim that I'm black, right? Okay, so that's an imaginative thing. Maybe you have a lot of black friends. Maybe you have a lot of Honduran friends. Maybe you have a lot of Latin American friends, whatever the fuck. Maybe you really like their food or that kind of bullshit. You're like, oh, I wish I could be this, right? That is imaginary though, because if you are not that thing, you cannot become that thing. However, we can just go right on into indoctrination. And this isn't the best example because personally I'm not really aware of any, forums where white people are claiming to be a race that they aren't, where they can just go in and type about like, I've always been Honduran in my heart. Okay, that kind of bullshit. I'm sure they exist because it's the internet. Anyway, even if you're not going on the internet, okay, you can successfully indoctrinate yourself to believe this about you, or you can entertain this fantasy about you to the point that you indoctrinate yourself to believe it, or you indoctrinate others to believe it, right? You tell other people that you're this race, you tell other people that this is your identity, etc. And that's the indoctrination step, okay? With the trans-trender bullshit, you can go online and find all kinds of forums of people entertaining their fantasy, entertaining their psychosis, and that sort of thing. Okay, that's very common. So that's second I. We have imagination, and then we have indoctrination. And the third I is intimidation. Okay, that might be my favorite one. Just because with intimidation, other people who disagree with you or other people who question you are intimidated by you and maybe by other people other people that are around you, or it just becomes the responsive rhetoric to your assertion of your fantasy, of your imaginary fantasy, right? So that being said, that gives us phrases like trans men are men and trans women are women, etc. And also when people say like, oh, you're just ignorant, you should get educated, I will remind every single fucking liberal on the earth that an education is not something you get by clicking a fucking link on the internet, you morons. Okay? An education is a series of learnings over time that you receive in order to get something like a diploma or credentials. Okay? You don't get educated by clicking on a link and reading it. Maybe you get informed about an issue, but unless you're actually formally educated, saying get educated is saying like, why don't you go to 10 years of schooling and become a doctor? Or why don't you go get your GED when you're only in 7th grade? Like, okay, let me just go do that and I'll come back 10 years later once I'm a doctor, or I'll come back 8 years later once I have my GED and I'll respond to this comment, right? That's not an argument. Anyway, other people intimidate those that don't agree with you, or you intimidate those that don't agree with you. So that is also like very extreme comments back to someone who disagrees with you, saying, well, you're just ignorant, you're just uneducated, like, haven't you heard of blah, blah, blah before? That kind of bullshit, okay? That's intimidation. And then, unfortunately, since everyone and their grandma's dog is, ascribing to the 4 eyes of toxic liberalism, we have integration, where this imaginary thing that someone has been indoctrinated to believe is true about themselves, and they have intimidated other people, and other people have intimidated others for questioning such an identity, becomes integrated into the greater part of society. Okay? And that's why we have identity politics. That's why we have a lot of the bullshit that we have, and that's why a lot of people are fucking toxic liberals, okay? Or they're engaging in toxic liberalism, okay? And this isn't just about crazy white people claiming to be a race that they aren't, and this isn't just about, people with extremely internalized homophobia to believe that they're their opposite sex. This is also having to do with, you can apply this to pro-liars, right? People who are anti-abortion, they have this imaginary fantasy that, 6-week-old fetus is a baby, etc. Okay? So everyone can be a toxic liberal. Everyone can practice the behaviors of toxic liberalism, but everyone also has the power to break free of that cycle. Okay? So if you have this imaginary thing in your mind, right, that you think you are, that you think you need to follow, that you think is your identity, right? You can be like, am I being indoctrinated about this now? Is this imaginary? Ask yourself that. Is that an imaginary thing you've created about yourself? Is that an imaginary persona? Is that an imaginary wish that you have? Is that an imaginary fucking hypothetical that you wish could apply to you? You might want to fact check before you go running around, shouting from every rooftop that your fantasy is real, or that everyone needs to abide by your fantasy. Okay? Indoctrination is easy, especially when we have a society that's already integrated most of these, aspects. And then the intimidation part is also easy, to just glom on to groupthink and insist that your opinion is the only right one, and also not even being able to argue with others. Like, if someone is asking questions, you should fucking be able to answer them, okay? You shouldn't just be writing them off and being like, oh, you're an asshole, like, oh, you need to get educated, that kind of bullshit, okay? And we also shouldn't be integrating this toxic liberalism, okay, if we can help it, all right? So let's do our best to be aware of imagination, indoctrination, intimidation, and integration, and let's not do it anymore, because it doesn't make sense in the grander scheme of things. When you actually try to apply it, it erases women, it erases a lot of other groups, and it puts people in positions that they probably shouldn't be in, right? Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.